An inquiry into the absence from court proceedings by corruption-accused Angelo Agrizzi came to a halt today. This was after the state argued that the matter couldn't continue in his absence. Judge David Makhoba ruled that due to the ill health of former Bosasa COO, he should then appear virtually tomorrow. For more on this, we are joined now by Agrizzi's lawyer, Daniel Witz. Daniel, appreciate your time this evening. Just bring us up to speed with the health condition of Angelo Agrizzi.
Good evening to the viewers. Thank you for having me on your show. The health condition of Mr. Agrizzi, despite what the state view is, hasn't improved since October when he was denied bail and sent to prison. Ended up in Baragwanath, the prison hospital, then Baragwanath and Life Always Hospital, where he was in a coma for 49 days. It hasn't improved. It's become manageable to an extent, but it definitely hasn't improved to allow him to physically appear in court.
Now, just give us a little bit more information into his state of health, and as far as, is he able to attend court proceedings virtually? Is he able to attend court proceedings the entire day?
So if you look at there was a joint minute by the two expert doctors, medical professionals. That's Mr. Agrizzi's doctor and the state-appointed doctor who assessed him. And they both agree that he cannot attend physically for obvious health reasons. He may be able to attend virtually, however, there are certain conditions attached to that, such as he has to have a full nursing contingent staff available, an ambulance readily available. He has to have a fully maintained generator in order that his oxygen can continue to flow. And in terms of his concentration or his ability to stand trial virtually, he's only able at current rate to maybe attend a trial for 2 to 3 hours a day with a break every 20 to 30 minutes.
Now, these conditions that you've stipulated, are these conditions currently available for him? Should he attend it tomorrow? Because what we do understand is that he's expected to attend court proceedings virtually as of tomorrow.
So Mr. Agrizzi will appear virtually tomorrow, but it is not to give evidence. It is purely to listen. So in that sense, he will have his oxygen flowing. He will have a intensivist nurse on standby, as well as all his relevant medication, hopefully an ambulance on standby should the need arise. But it is purely for him to listen in order that the experts, the doctors, can give evidence tomorrow in terms of his mental health as well as his physical health.
Now, let's talk about his responses, because at some point, as any individual who's on trial, he'll be expected to respond. Is he in a position to respond at the moment, any time in the near future, from what you know?
So at this stage, the majority of this evidence will be led by Dr. Earlin tomorrow, but I can say that he is not in a position to respond, but that will be more fully set out in argument tomorrow. It'll be quite interesting to listen.
Are you able to tell us what the diagnosis on his health is?
I can't tell you the diagnosis, firstly because I'm not a medical professional, so I'd probably be saying the incorrect terms. And again, it is for argument tomorrow, so the relevant diagnoses will be vetted and explained to the court, the prosecution, and the judge tomorrow.
Are you able to give us any insights into what evidence that the prosecution has presented against your client?
The only evidence from a health point of view that the prosecution has presented is that Mr. Agrizzi attended his daughter's wedding a few years ago, his only daughter's wedding, and he walked her down the aisle. What the prosecution fails to mention is that he trained for over 4 months just to take a few steps. Over and above that, he was on his full oxygen with a walking assistant, and thereafter he wasn't able to participate in any walking, dancing, etc. And he took 4 days to travel down to Cape Town. He then did a further interview, which the state say, why can he give an interview with JJ Tabane and not appear in court? It was in his home with full power backup, with his oxygen cylinders, with his nursing staff on standby, with the relevant social distancing because it was during the peak of COVID. The state are very amiss to mention all of those aspects. They'd rather just turn it in order to use it against him.
So if those conditions were made available, then he would be able to appear before a judge, even if it is virtually?
Only so, again, it's agreed, it's common cause that he cannot appear physically. The problem is that the conditions slap to him appearing virtually. How do the state, how do the courts, how do the justice system comply with that? Because if he is only available for maybe 3 hours a day with 30-minute breaks in between, he has to have a full power backup, nursing staff, etc., etc. You're looking at practically a 1 to 2 year trial. What happens with load shedding, which isn't getting any better? What happens with signal being cut either at court or either at Mr. Agrizzi's residence? How do we practically run this trial? Because I know there are a few cases before our South African courts where witnesses have given evidence virtually. But I've yet to see a successful case where an accused person has either, number one, given evidence, alternatively, listened to the evidence against him. And I believe the state have pages and pages, over 40, 50 witnesses here, which means Mr. Agrizzi has to be able to listen to each and every witness during the proceedings.
So in your own understanding or your knowledge of Angelo Agrizzi, do you think he has capacity to go through a 2-year trial based on his current health status?
It's for the judge to decide, but in my view, I don't believe practically that it can be managed by a justice system, by a court system. I don't know I haven't seen any precedent where it has successfully been managed and implemented. It will be interesting to see how the judge deals with it, but I don't believe that he can attend his trial where, number one, the balance is taken where the state's rights are protected and Mr. Agrizzi's constitutional rights are upheld at the same time, the right to a fair trial.
So let's assume that the judge agrees with you that Angelo Agrizzi does not have capacity to stand at trial over a 2-year period or whatever period. What are the options that are available to the judge?
The options are that the charges against him would be withdrawn on medical grounds, that he is not in a position to stand trial, therefore the state cannot successfully prosecute him. Alternatively, the state could discuss some sort of deal where they could utilize Mr. Agrizzi to give evidence against either co-accused or other potential suspects they're investigating, which is an aspect we've been raising with the state since Mr. Agrizzi gave evidence at the Zondo Commission and the inquiry into state capture. He's offered his assistance, which unfortunately, other than the Honorable Judge Zondo, every other state entity has turned their back on him and said, we don't need your assistance. And the proof is in the pudding. I don't know how many successful prosecutions you've seen from state capture, but that's a discussion for another time.
So how integral would his testimonies, if he did turn state witness, be in solving solving some of the cases or the various allegations that he primarily is accused of?
In terms of the allegations where he's primarily accused, the main accused in those matters were political players. His evidence is crucial. Alternatively, the evidence that Mr. Agrizzi gave at state capture, it speaks for itself. It's in both his books, The Belly of the Beast, and the evidence of state capture, which had the country enthralled while it was being undertaken by the Honorable Judge Zondo. So his evidence is crucial, and it has been tested. It has been vetted by the investigated state capture. Very little has been found to have flaws, and the state could utilize his knowledge as well as the history that he was involved in a lot of matters to hopefully bring real culprits to justice.
Can you give us some insights, finally, into the impact, if you will, that this case has had on the life of Angelo Agrizzi? I'd assume that his health has deteriorated in part as a result of the pressures associated with this case, but I stand to be corrected, Daniel.
It's not so much the pressures associated with this case. If you recall, when the judge denied him bail, there was an agreement between ourselves and the prosecution, the defense team, that Mr. Agrizzi would hand himself in at Brackendown Police Station, that bail would not be opposed. We arrived at court. All the other accused persons were allowed to have bail. Bail wasn't opposed. All of a sudden, the state turned around and said, no, we are opposing bail, and Mr. Agrizzi's incarcerated despite coming to court on oxygen. The evidence speaks for itself. From the time he was incarcerated, the prison, unfortunately, as good as they may be, were not equipped to handle his serious medical condition. Mr. Agrizzi collapsed at the prison. He was rushed to Baragwanath, where, unfortunately, due to the high volume of people in this country, did not have a high care bed for him. He received the best treatment that he could in the situation, but it wasn't enough for his medical condition, and it just deteriorated, and he spent 49 days in a coma. And the medical expert, the state's medical expert, Mr. Agrizzi's medical expert, have said in no uncertain terms, they don't know who to thank, whether it's a higher power, the doctors, the nurses, the intensivists, but he is very lucky to still be breathing. He's very lucky to still be alive. So despite what the state think, the turning point was when he was incarcerated. It wasn't necessary. Unfortunately, that was the catalyst, and Mr. Agrizzi's health is in a serious decline.
Daniel Witz, appreciate your time. Angelo Agrizzi's lawyer speaking to us this evening. As a former Bosasa COO, Angelo Agrizzi has failed to appear in court on a number of times and finally been asked by the judge to appear virtually this Wednesday.